Hello and welcome back to another episode of our podcast, The Missing Link in Your Healing. In order to truly heal, we need to understand what we're working with, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually. So I'm delighted to introduce our episode today, which Loretta is going to speak to mostly, and I'll interject. And we're talking about thyroid health, physical, energetic, and emotional roots of thyroid health. So, Loretta, I'm going to hand over to you. This is going to be a good one.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Antoinette. I'm very excited about this topic. I'm going to start with a disclaimer that I can really geek out on all this energetic stuff, and so I might go on. So, Antoinette, you just do this when it's like enough, okay? Because I know I can go on. And when I was busy preparing this, I was like, oh, this is so exciting. I've got to tell them this. Oh, I mustn't forget to tell them this. And okay, so I'm just going to trust that I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to hear today. And that it doesn't have to be everything. So the thyroid is a tiny butterfly-shaped gland that's located here in the middle of your neck, in the middle of your throat. And this is the one thing I did forget to Google, was what are the statistics of people who have thyroid disorders? But I can tell you now, having been in private practice for almost 30 years, lots, all right? So I used to see probably on average between 8 and 10, sometimes 12 people a day. And I used to see 12 people a day, 5 times a week. And I have to tell you, in any given week, there were at least 3 or 4 people that either came to me because they had a thyroid condition, or as their past medical history, they had a thyroid condition that was busy being medicated, or had been medicated, something like that. Okay, so it is really common. It seems to be more common in women than men. And when we go into the energetics, that might actually it might become a bit more obvious. This does not mean, please, men. It doesn't mean that we're discriminating against men. It doesn't mean that men don't have the same underlying unconscious issues as women, and that they can't have them. But it does seem to be more common with women. One of the primary unconscious drivers behind thyroid disease is an inability to be honest with ourselves about what we need, and articulating that. So this is something that has almost been, I'm going to say, has been bred into women, because women, we have this whole altruistic, it's service to everyone else. It's like, we're the tendon befrienders. We're not the hunter-gatherers. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So small butterfly-shaped gland. So first we're going to start off just with a little bit of medicine and a bit of science for those of you who don't know. I'm going to try and keep that very, very short. Your thyroid produces 2 hormones, T3 and T4. Now, most people who go and have their thyroids checked, they check 2 things. They check something called thyroid stimulating hormone, which is a stimulating hormone produced by your pituitary gland in your head. And your pituitary gland, when it measures that your blood levels of thyroid hormone are too low, it sends a signal to your thyroid through thyroid stimulating hormone to say, make more thyroid. Your thyroid hormone, not thyroid. Your thyroid responds to that signal and starts making more T4. And so thyroid stimulating hormone and T4, those are the 2 levels that are measured when you go for a standard thyroid blood test. However, T4 gets converted into T3, and T4 is the inactive form, and T3 is the active form. So you can have lots of T4. You can have perfectly normal T4 levels, but if the T4 isn't being converted into T3, then you're going to end up having symptoms of an underactive thyroid. So just know that, all right? So it's really important. Well, I don't know, maybe in other countries it's not like that, but in South Africa, the standard test is thyroid stimulating hormone T4, and you can ask to have T3 done. So it's really important that those 3 end up being on your panel, okay? So you've got these 2 thyroid hormones. Now, these hormones act as messages, and they basically tell your body how to use energy. So your thyroid regulates your metabolism, it affects your body temperature, it regulates your heart rate, and it regulates the clarity of your brain. It affects your mood, it can affect your digestion, and it can even affect your menstrual cycle. So this tiny little gland that's situated over here is really as a super important function, which is why when it doesn't work, we really can have problems, right? So we can either have an overfunctioning of the thyroid, which is called hyperthyroidism, or we can have an underfunctioning of the thyroid, which is called hypothyroidism. In my practice, just in my personal experience, underactive thyroid seems to be more common. However, The symptoms, okay, so in the textbook, underactive thyroid symptoms include weight gain, depression, fatigue, increased cold sensitivity, skin scarring, like stretch marks. You start getting striations on your skin. If the hypothyroidism is extreme, you can get a swollen tongue. Your speech becomes sluggish, right? Everything completely slows down. That's hypothyroidism. And hyperthyroidism is obviously the opposite. So you become metabolically super active. You lose weight without changing your diet. You can have night sweats. You can have fluctuations in temperature. You become anxious. You know that wired feeling. You can have insomnia. So you don't sleep, but you feel fully wired almost all the time. So it looks like two completely distinct sets of symptoms. However, hormones, when they're underactive or overactive, can present in a similar way. And this is where things start getting a little bit gray, because you can, for example, have the extreme fatigue of an underactive thyroid, and you can have the wiredness of an overactive thyroid. And it's not so much about whether it's overactive or underactive, it's how imbalanced is the hormone level, right? I mean, this is getting a bit technical, but just so that it's not as black and white. I mean, I remember when I was first in practice, I was like, this is not what the textbook said, okay, because we're humans. The textbook is trying to put us into compartments, but it's difficult to actually compartmentalize it completely. So when you have a thyroid problem, overactive or underactive, it can be because the signaling system from your pituitary isn't working effectively. Actually, there's another part of your brain called your hypothalamus. It is actually the one that picks up your hormone levels first, and it sends a message to the pituitary that sends a message to your thyroid. So you can see there's this very complex feedback loop that's happening constantly. So if there's a malfunction anywhere in the loop, you can get the overactive or the underactive thyroid. There is another set of thyroid diseases which actually are mediated through your immune system. So it's an autoimmune thyroid condition, right? Which means that your immune system starts attacking and affecting your thyroid. And we have two. We have an overactive one, which is called Graves' disease, and we have the underactive version, which is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, all right? Both of them are as a consequence of I'm going to say a malfunction. Yes, it actually is. The immune system recognizes your thyroid as foreign and starts attacking it as if it was an invader, as if it was the enemy. And so that then creates the symptoms of overactive or underactive thyroid. And you can test for Hashimoto's or Graves' by having your thyroid antibodies tested. So that's another thing to look for when you're going to have your thyroid tested, is to make sure that whoever sends you for the test checks not only the normal TSH and T4, but also T3 and thyroid antibodies. Because if you've got an autoimmune thyroid condition, it has different underlying psychosomatic structures than if you've got, when I say ordinary, okay, so please, it's not ordinary and extraordinary, but you get where I'm going from. And the other thing that's really important is that besides the hormone feedback loop, which makes it a systemic condition actually, and like, even though it's like a single little gland, when you add the autoimmune part to it, now you realize it's actually your whole body is affected. You don't just have a thyroid condition. The symptoms are presenting at the area of your thyroid, but that doesn't mean that there isn't things going on systemically in your body. And when we look at the energetics, you'll start seeing how much more complicated it is than your thyroid doesn't work. Your thyroid's not producing enough hormone, or your thyroid's producing too much hormone. It's really not that simple. It's a systemic condition. There's multiple organs. It's very layered and it's very nuanced. And this is also why if you've got an underactive thyroid, so what happens is, if you've got a very overactive thyroid, what they still do, I think, I haven't been in practice for a few years, but certainly when I was still in practice up to 7 years ago, if you had Graves' disease, excessively overactive thyroid, they would make you drink a radioactive iodine solution. Your thyroid would take up the radioactive iodine and it would literally destroy your thyroid. And then they put you on thyroid hormone replacement. So that's the only real treatment for an overactive thyroid. Or resecting part of the thyroid is another one. Or if it's underactive, they give you the thyroid hormone replacement therapy, right? And the thyroid hormone replacement therapy actually works relatively well. And if it's monitored, it can actually regulate all these functions. And most people can actually live quite happily. And actually, it's one of the medications that seems to have, when I say seems to have, it seems to have relatively few side effects. People can tend to be able to take it for a very long time without having like major shakeups in their lives. And honestly, it can be life-saving, right? I mean, if you've got an underactive thyroid, or you don't have, or half your thyroid gland is gone, or you've had overactive, you had the overactive thyroid, you took the radioactive iodine. If you don't have those hormones, you're in big trouble. I had someone that I know who was an ex-client of mine, was seeing a different doctor. And they were taken off their thyroid medication. She had been on this thyroid hormone replacement for decades. And I hadn't seen her for months. And I got a video call from her. And I have to tell you, I nearly fell off my chair. Because this woman she was very thin. She was one of those sort of wired and wiry, and a kind of framed woman. And when I saw her, she hadn't got hugely fat, but she had certainly gained weight. But the worst thing was, her speech was so slow because her tongue was so swollen, and she had the moon face because she'd been off the medication for 4 months. So she went back on, actually went back to, her normal self. So it's really, it's life-saving to take, if you can do it no other way, it literally saves your life by taking it. Now, this is just my experience, guys. I'm just going to speak from my experience. I've had patients who've been on thyroid hormone replacement for years and years and years, and who come to me and say, I want to go off it. It's hard. It is hard to get that working again, because you've got to be very patient, and it takes a long time if it does work, and it sometimes doesn't work. I'll be quite honest with you. It sometimes doesn't work. And because there's so many systems involved, this is actually the issue. So if people are not prepared to do that deep inner work that we've been talking about, that we talk about in our podcast all the time, if you're not prepared to consider the energetics, if you're not prepared to consider the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical implications, it is impossible. I'm going to actually go out and say it's impossible. You will not fix it. Okay. So and even if you do all of those things, you might still need to take the thyroid hormone replacement therapy. I'm going to actually say that too. All right. So let's start. Antoinette's nodding, and those of you who are listening, Antoinette's nodding, and she's pointing because she's actually affirming. Those of you who are familiar with the chakra system in Hinduism and the Indian tradition will know that there are 7 primary chakras in the body. And the one that's around the throat area is the 5th one. And the 5th one, its name is Visuddha in Sanskrit, and it means purified. And this particular energy center, so just for those of you who don't know, a chakra basically connects your physical, mental, emotional, I'd go as far as to say possibly even your spiritual. It basically connects your physical body to all the layers of your energy body. So it's like a wheel. Chakra means wheel. It's a wheel that connects all the physical. So the center of the wheel is in the central line of your body. And think of it like a cone. It's like a wide cone that narrows to the center, and then it branches out again in the back. So you've got a cone in the front, and you've got a cone in the back, right? So the front part of the chakra is the receiving part. The back part of the chakra is the giving, the doing part. And so this throat chakra, each chakra is governed and controlled by a particular gland. And the gland of the throat chakra, the 5th chakra, is the thyroid. It is the controller, endocrinologically speaking, of this particular area. Now, this is our area of authentic expression, our willpower, and our ability to communicate. And this is not just with the outside world. This is with ourselves. In my opinion, it's one of the biggest problems. Some of us we can put it out there, but we don't put it in here, or we put it out there in a certain form, and then the way we talk to and communicate with ourselves is dreadful. So please, this is not just how we externalize, this is how we internalized as well. Okay. It is also it's the chakra that is between the brow, which controls your mind and your thinking, and your heart, which controls your feeling and your intuition. It's the one that's between the two. So this is the seat of our willpower. And it determines whether we are following the head or following the heart. So when we have an inner conflict between what we love and what we think we need to or must do, the thyroid, the throat, the will is caught in between. And if we vacillate, if today I'm following the dictates of my mind only, And tomorrow I decide, no, I need to follow my heart. But the next day I'm back to the mind and I'm going head, heart, head, heart. The world's going, which way are we going? Oh my God, today it's with the head, tomorrow it's with the heart. And that leaches energy out of this energy center. So it's really important to have, and especially for those of you who've watched or listened to some of our other podcasts, when I talk about our focus creates our reality, and do you have your focus on what you love, or do you have your focus on your unconscious patterns that are running, through your fears? You use your will to shift your focus. This is where your will is. This is the area you need in order to activate your will. So if we don't express what's true for us, if we silence ourselves because of fear of being rejected, because of guilt, because of what we may or may not have done, but because of excessive self-judgment and judgment of others, when we stifle that self-expression and we do it over time, it can lead to thyroid dysfunction. So let's just have a quick look at I want to say this also. The front part of the chakra is where we receive. We receive mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. The back part of the chakra is how we express ourselves in the world, and that's very often through our work. So when you're stuck in work you hate, because you cannot be honest with yourself about what it is that you need, or when you're stuck in that head-heart conflict, by profession you're an accountant, but your heart is longing for you to be an actress. I'm picking like extremes, right? And you're denying that constantly. And basically you're telling yourself it's okay and that you're settling for what's not true for you. Then it's very difficult to express yourself effectively. And that leads to leaching of energy. So as soon as we have excessive energy being leached from this area, it affects the whole throat. So it can affect your vocal cords and your tonsils and, your top part of your esophagus and your trachea. But from a glandular point of view, it affects your thyroid. So let's look at some of the underlying psychosomatic features of, what does it mean, psychosomatically? And please remember, these are generalizations, guys. It's just a roadmap. It's just a place to start. This might not be true for everyone, and not all of it is true for everyone, all right? But just generally, hypothyroidism, when it's underactive, is often rooted in prolonged pressure from an authority figure. So if when you were tiny and you felt super pressured to please the authorities in your life, as in, you needed to do better or you needed to achieve more, and you felt that wasn't possible. In other words, your needs were never actually the ones that were validated. It was always about the needs of whoever was the authority, your mother or your father, whoever your caregiver was. Then what ends up happening is it leads to us shutting down. We can shut down. We can shut down because we believe we're just not enough. So we just stop trying. That's one of them. Okay. Hyperthyroidism, when it's overactive, this one is driven by a belief that love has to be earned by performance and success. This is really the one where you see this in very successful people, very often, not in all successful people, but in very, very often. And because the performance is the essential part, and because we can never actually perform well enough, or we don't get that external validation that we're longing for, then we end up burning ourselves out and we end up punishing ourselves. And so then we turn that negative self-talk inwards. So those are that's sort of psychosomatic underlying of normal hypo and hyperparathyroidism. In Hashimoto, so remember Hashimoto's thyroiditis is when your thyroid starts becoming less active because your immune system is attacking it. And this one is tied to self-denial, childhood guilt, and the suppression of our own needs because of fear of being punished. So basically what we learn in early childhood is that when we express our needs, it meets with the disapproval of authority figures, and in some cases even punishment. And so as a consequence of that, we don't express our needs. We are not honest about what we need because we're scared that if we admit to ourselves, and God forbid to someone else, what we might really need, we could be punished for that. And so as a consequence of that, the thyroid starts shutting down. Graves' disease, which is when it becomes overactive via your immune system, is marked also by deep frustration and fear of expression. So they both about where the underactive one is, I'm so frightened of being rejected or being punished that I'd rather just not try. I'm not even going to voice my needs. I'm not even going to admit what I have. Overactive is, this is what I want. I am so angry that this has never been what I've been able to have, right? I'm so angry at the fact that I've never been able to express myself well enough. So the overactive one, you can hear it's more active, right? It's about stewing. It's about having it stewing and brewing for a long time until you get so mad, you've just got to let it out. And it very often comes out in a way that can be very destructive. It can come out as hypercriticism. It can come out as, and it's very often associated with very deep unresolved trauma. And so when I say, instead of it coming out in a way that actually serves you, because you think, well, then you've got to express it. But it can come out in such a way that it leads to huge amounts of blaming and shaming. And then it just reinforces the victimhood. So on the one hand, the one that keeps quiet looks like the sort of under-expresser. And so they never express what's going on. The overactive ones, they express in ways that are hugely damaging, actually, can be, to themselves and everyone else around them. So it's not good or bad. It just is. So I want to now talk about a little bit about the Chinese system, right? So that was the Indian system, more or less. Now, when we look at the Chinese system, and then I just want to quickly speak about the Japanese one, which is the Jin Shin Jitsu, and then we'll weave all three of them in together. So, one last thing I want to tell you about the chakra is that this is where our fear of failure lives. Because of the consequence of what the failure might mean. And it's very often associated with the punishment that we're going to incur, either from ourselves. You're so stupid. How could you be so dumb? What the hell's wrong with you? You're so messed up. That either I'm telling myself that, or someone else is telling me that. I'm frightened that that's what I'm going to get from the outside, right? And so because that fear of failure lives here, if we don't find a way to acknowledge it and act despite it, it can shut us off from literally living our life's purpose, which is going to just lead me into a little segue, in that the thyroid doesn't operate on its own. The thyroid and the adrenal function are very closely linked. And the reason why I mention that is because energetically, your adrenals are linked to your purpose. How purposeful, not are you saving the world, just how purposeful do you feel your life is? So what happens is, when we have adrenal burnout, when we're producing huge amounts of cortisol because we're super stressed, the cortisol can interfere with the conversion of T4 to T3. So those high levels of stress hormones from chronic stress and burnout can impact our thyroid function. So this is another reason why it's not as simple as saying, well, let's just treat the thyroid and everything will be peachy. Well, because if the underlying problem is your adrenals, then just treating the thyroid is, you're treating at the place where the symptom lies. You're not actually treating the problem. It's like building a dam on a river, and then everything below the dam dries up, let's just say. And then when the dam overflows, everything floods. And all we keep on doing is repairing the villages downstream from the dam. The problem is the dam, guys. The problem is it's not the river. The problem is the dam. So a thyroid problem can often be a downstream problem from your immune system responding as if it needs attacking, and your adrenals being burnt out and interfering with your thyroid function. Okay, so this leads me into the Chinese medicine one, all right? Because in Chinese medicine, and I'm going to try and keep this very simple, because in Chinese medicine it can get quite complicated, and this is where I get very excited. So I'm going to try and keep it simple so that everyone can understand, because not everyone gets as excited about this as I do. So basically, the thyroid in Chinese medicine is affected by the heart organ function energy, the kidney organ function energy, and the spleen. The heart and kidney being the main two. So the kidney organ function energy governs and controls the adrenals. So just bear that in mind, right? And the heart, in Chinese medicine, they say when the heart and the kidney organ function is no longer working harmoniously, then we end up burning out and we start getting overwhelmed, and we end up getting identity confusion or self-abandonment. So chronic stress and this inner conflict that we were talking about affects the heart organ function energy. Now, the heart organ function energy regulates something that they call Shen in Chinese medicine. And the literal translation for Shen is the spirit. So that heart organ function energy, other than just controlling the function of your heart, and we are going to do a whole episode on the heart, regulates your consciousness, your mental and emotional function, your level of awareness, and your radiance of life. And those two affect how well your thyroid works. So when you have this either the chronic stress that causes your adrenal glands to burn out, that affects your thyroid, that's the kidney organ function energy that then affects the thyroid, or you have this imbalance between the heart and the kidney, you actually you decrease the radiance of your spirit. And remember, your throat chakra is your will. It's how you express yourself in the world. And so the health of your heart organ function energy is determined by the brightness of your eyes, the radiance of your skin, the intensity of your spirit. Like, how much energy do you have? A Chinese medicine practitioner, that's what they're looking at to see whether your heart organ function energy is working optimally. So this is tied in with the self-expression that's associated with the thyroid. So when our heart organ function energy is suppressed, it dims our consciousness. It dims our spirit. It dims our shine. And that makes us more, inclined to respond to the fear rather than to what we love. Because the truth is, we find it very difficult to connect to what we love. What is true? When that energy of that, when that Shen, when the spirit is suppressed and depressed, then the will becomes weakened. And it's like, well, you rather just go with the flow and allow the river to take you, wherever it is, rather than being part of the flow. Deciding, this is how I want to flow. This is where I want to flow. This is what I want to express. So the last thing, well, it's not quite the last thing, but one of the last things I also want to mention, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but it's difficult to weave this all together, is that the shadow side of the throat chakra, this is what I didn't mention, is dishonesty. Now this, please, this doesn't mean if you've got a thyroid problem, you lie to everyone, okay? Please, that's not what it means, right? It's about dishonesty to yourself. It's about not being true, not being real with what is the reality. And for those of you who've listened to the earlier episodes, if you want to create consciously, it's like you've got a battery and you want to light a light bulb. You have to connect the negative terminal, what is real and true for you in terms of what are you thinking and feeling and doing. And then you've got to connect the positive terminal, like what is your vision and what would you love? And we're all very, very enamored with the vision and what we'd love. And many of us find it very difficult to face the truth of where we are right now. So I'm going to give you an example of my own. So I've always said, I'm not great with money. I'm great with earning money. I can make money, I can spend money, and money can flow through me, but I really am bad at accumulating it, and which is why I don't have a lot of it, right? Well, actually, I have enough of it, but the truth is, it's because I don't treat money, or I, in the past, didn't treat money with any kind of reverence. It was like easy come, easy go. And so because I didn't actually respect it, the truth is I didn't respect it, which is why I didn't manage it effectively. And as a consequence of that, it just used to flow through me without me being able to accumulate it in any kind of way. So this doesn't make me a good or bad person. It just makes me a person who's blind to the truth. So, I can work on myself and I can work on my visioning and I can connect to my vision. But if the truth is that I don't manage the money, I don't have a budget, for example, I don't have a savings plan, how am I going to accumulate it? Because I am actually not paying attention to it. So our reality is, what are we paying attention to? And when it comes to the thyroid and it comes to this throat chakra, it is, what are we not being honest with ourselves about? And it's very often about our own needs. And you can imagine that if you feel that expressing your needs is going to lead to punishment and rejection, this is bloody difficult, particularly if this happened to you when you were very young. If you felt that you were punished for expressing yourself, if you felt that you were punished for expressing a need, if you felt that nothing you did was ever good enough, if you could never meet the bar, if you could never make the target, then this becomes extremely difficult to do, which is why it's so important that we look at the shadow aspect. And one of the first places I would say to start is just ask yourself, where am I not being honest about what I really need? What do I really need? What do I really want in my life? Right? What's true for me? Is it true that I've suppressed my needs? And you know what? If you go, well, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I need, the answer is yes. So we need to spend a bit of time about, so if there was no restriction, imagine there was no punishment, like, what would you love? And one of the reasons why we don't want to do that is because then it's like, yes, but Loretta, now you've made me long for what I've loved, but I can't have it. Well, you can have anything if you're prepared to just uncover those layers around it. And it's not easy. We've said this 1,000 times. It's simple, but it's not easy. So, and it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes being honest with yourself. You don't have to tell the world what you'd love. Just tell yourself. Just start with, like, what do you need? And it can be as simple. Last week we did an episode on food. It can be as simple as, what would I love to eat right now? What would nourish me most optimally right now? Not what does everyone say I have to eat. What do I like? What do I like? What do I like to do? What do I like to eat? How do I like to sleep? What are my hobbies? What do I like? Most of us don't even know what those things are. The last thing I'm going to say is that the Shen, the spirit, which is located in the heart, according to Chinese medicine, is deeply involved when a person struggles with self-expression, inner truth, and the alignment between thought, feeling, action. When our heads and our hearts are out of alignment, our will is caught in the center. And that's when we potentially drain that energy out of this chakra. And that's when we can develop these kind of problems. And I think that's it. Antoinette, would you like to come on now?
I'm actually going to just keep it very short for a change. As someone who's had thyroid issues since I was 30, so that's a very, very long time. And
oh, yes, because you're so very, very old, right? It's a joke.
Well, it's over 30 years, let's put it that way. Mostly underactive, but at times overactive. And then my cancer was lymphatic, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it started in a gland in the right side of my thyroid. So I did not have thyroid cancer, but I had 22 cancerous glands in my throat, and there was a cancerous gland in my thyroid, and I had half my thyroid taken out. So the only reason I'm sharing that is to say, if I'd known what Loretta brought today, 30 years ago, because all of it actually resonated when I wasn't disconnected. I've got very bad Wi-Fi today. So sorry, lucky you were doing all the talking because I had to disappear. But I'm not going to say more than that, except to say, if you're listening to this, pay heed. Because I can tell you now, I am a person who has been able to heal myself. I'm still alive, and I'm probably going to live quite a lot longer, but I've had a long journey with my thyroid. And if I'd known this in the beginning and I'd started doing that inner work, potentially I wouldn't have had to have cancer, So it can be a lifelong journey of trying to find out how to help yourself, unless you listen to someone like Loretta and work with someone like Loretta. So, because we also need help with this, Loretta. It's not, once you have this insight, it could send people into a like, oh my goodness, this is resonating, but it's so huge. Now, what do I do with this? I need
where do I even start?
Yeah. So, sorry, you've got your hand up, so you're...
No, I was just going to say, sorry about if you'd known this 30 years ago, it's just for any of you who like, oh my word, like I've missed the boat, or why didn't I know this sooner, or why didn't I do this? If you had known it sooner, you might still not have acted on it. The best time is always now, remember?
You're right. Yeah. And also, Loretta, I would never be sitting on this podcast and doing everything I'm doing in my life if I hadn't got cancer. 100%. Cancer was 100%. the biggest backhanded gift I ever got in my life, because our body sometimes... Yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Carry on.
Okay. So I just want to give you a few little tips for Shen medicine, okay? So you might go, Shen medicine, what was Shen again? Shen is the spirit That's the essence of the heart organ function energy. Okay. And this is something that we can all do. And listen, sorry, but I'm not going to give you anything you haven't heard before, but this might just reiterate that doing one or more of these things is actually a good place to start. So Shen medicine is meditation, whichever form that takes for you, time in nature, however that looks to you, all right? Conscious breathing, a heartfelt connection. And I would say, start that to yourself, with yourself. And if you don't know how to do it, start it with your eating. Start not trying to fix your eating, just like checking in with, what do I really feel like? How does this food make me feel? What does it feel like to be hungry? How does it feel to be full? Oh, having said that, it was there are 2 days on the Hindu calendar, just before new moon and before full moon, called Ekadashi. And apparently those are the days where the spiritual forces are at their strongest. And apparently our bodies need less food. So my husband and I, twice a month, we do this 24-hour fast on Ekadashi. And when it falls on a Sunday, when it's in the week, it's easy because we're busy. But on a Sunday, it's hard. And I have to tell you, nothing tasted as good as dinner last night. After 24 hours of not eating anything, nothing tasted as good as that dinner did. So can you do that? What can you get some joy? What can you do that's going to actually just give you some joy? That's the heartfelt connection. Creativity, any kind of creativity, writing in a journal, doodling, coloring in those mandalas, I don't know, painting dots on rocks, building a puzzle, all of those things, knitting, crocheting, anything. Those are all creative endeavors. And then spiritual reflection and good sleep. All of those are Shen medicine. Antoinette.
Yes, thank you for that, Loretta. And I'm completely on board with all of that. I have to just add to that, though, that I was doing all of those things, or maybe not so much creativity, and I still got very ill. So it's not to say you shouldn't do them. If I hadn't been doing them, maybe I wouldn't be sitting here. But I think that going into to work with I don't know if we call it shadow stuff or the past trauma or the psychological stuff, is really important together with that. So
100%.
that in and of itself is helpful and critical.
But it's not enough.
But it's not going to sort out if there was a childhood trauma or you're very self-punishing. So, but it's very important as a grounding, and then to be able to work with the right person. And if it's not Loretta, you have to find the right person who can guide you through this journey of seeing all of that. Because also when you see the stuff in yourself, like everything you've mentioned, I can go, most of it, yeah. But I'm far enough down the path to have already worked with that and to know there's a gift in that, but it can be quite overwhelming, when it starts coming up. So to do all those practices, the Shen medicine, but also to work with somebody who can guide you to do the inner work, which is not always easy. It's very necessary, and it ends in a magnificent end result, not just for your physical health, but your spiritual health and your whole life. But we need somebody to guide us, I think, and hold a light to it. So I just wanted to add that.
No, absolutely. One thing I've just realized, I forgot to tell you about the Jinshin Jitsu. I'm going to quickly, and then we're going to end it, right? So in Jinshin Jitsu, there are 26 areas on each side of the body called safety energy locks, where energy becomes dammed or blocked. And there are 3 of them that are involved in the thyroid, or in this throat chakra area. Safety energy lock number 11 is here. Sorry, my hair's in the way. It's here on the top of your trap. So if you just put your hand like this on your shoulder, top of your shoulder, you're holding safety energy lock number 11. Safety energy lock number 11 means criticism and judgment. All your excess emotional baggage in Jinshin Jitsu sits here on our shoulders. How interesting, hey? And so this is about your will. This is about how do you direct your personal will? How do you direct your will to dealing with your baggage, admitting what your baggage is, looking at the world differently, being prepared to look at both sides, your vision and your reality, your shadow and the light. This is safety energy lock number 11. It's a very important safety energy lock. Then the next one, sorry, I have to just move my hair out of the way, is safety energy lock number 12. So I'm just going to turn to the side. For those of you who are not watching, it's in the center of your neck, at the back of your neck, in the center, just on either side of your spine, is safety energy lock number 12. And safety energy lock number 12 means thy will be done. Safety energy lock number 12, look, it's at the back of the chakra. It's about expressing divine will, allowing the divine will, 12 is higher than 11, to supersede your personal will. Now, you can look at this in a spiritual kind of way, God's will over your will, or you could look at it as your higher self, what you'd love, over your lower self, what you think you deserve because of the experiences you've had. All right. And so those two safety energy locks are in this throat area. And then my personal favorite, if you are watching this, sorry, I am showing you, but if you take your finger and you stick it in your jugular notch, which is this little notch at the base of your throat, and you just follow underneath your collarbone, just where your collarbone starts moving upwards, starts moving up towards your shoulder, there's a little depression there. That's safety energy lock number 22. In fact, you can cross your hands over your chest and you can hold safety energy lock number 22. And safety energy lock number 22 means happy and content wherever I am. And safety energy lock number 22 in Jin Shin Jyutsu, they say this is where the 144,000 energetic functions come together. So the reason why I'm illustrating that for you is just to show you what powerful energy centers we have in the Japanese medicine, we have in the Hindu tradition, and how the Chinese medicine fits into that. And so safety energy locks, you literally can hold them. So you can lie on your bed holding the back of your neck. Now, I want to tell you, you can do this every day for an hour. Nothing's going to change if you don't do this a lot, okay? So it's not enough. It's as Antoinette said, the Shen medicine, it's not enough. It doesn't take the place of getting the right kind of help. But I want to just illustrate that some of the tools don't have to be painful, difficult, complex, hugely time-consuming, right? And they're easy enough that you can build them into your life. So I hope that gives you an idea how energetically it's all connected. And you know what's really beautiful about this is that the Hindu system, the Jin Shin Jyutsu system, the Chinese medicine system, those systems developed thousands of years ago before we understood physiology as we do now. And they developed sort of semi-separately because those countries are fairly far apart. There was no internet and there were no airplanes in those days. And they all have their own distinct way of how they explain it. But you know what? The thread of truth running through all three systems is the same.
And in fact, Loretta, in psychoneuroimmunology, it's also the same. It's just different language. It's all, this is a fundamental truth. And yeah, when we use the word hard, it's, is it what's wrong with hard, actually? No. And if, and the dark and the light, the shadow and the good, it is all together. And I think we've been conditioned to separate it. So
100%.
Part of this journey is to not see hard as hard necessarily, but as the birthing ground of. So that's why it's very helpful to get guidance. And while we talk about this stuff all the time, and I share my journey because I might seem to have been a very sick person, but I'm actually have danced with all of it and I'm pretty good, actually. And the reason I'm good is because I know what to do with it. It's been a long, hard journey for me because I did most of it alone, but I know what to do with it. Yeah. And I know now if I need help, I ask for it. So yeah, thank you, Loretta. That was absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you.
And I hope that if anybody has any questions, please pop them in the comments on YouTube or send us an email. All our details in the show notes. We'd be happy to answer them. And if you want to hear more. So thanks, Loretta.
Thanks so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.